Today, we're making authentic Bún Bò Huế, a spicy beef noodle soup that comes from central Vietnam and is arguably the most popular Vietnamese noodle soup, rivaling the likes of the most well-known pho. While the two do share a few similarities, the differences are huge. Bún Bò Huế is typically made with both beef and pork bones, and its broth is fragranced with lemongrass, fermented shrimp paste, and spices. Bún Bò Huế is renowned for its complexity and depth of flavor, and today we're gonna break down how to make it in 6 easy steps. So remember to like, comment, share, and save this video. Alright y'all, remember to wash your hands. Then step 1 is making our broth. Here's all the beef and pork we'll need. I have a couple pounds of beef knuckles, pork hocks, and beef shank. You can use any kind of bones you want, including beef rib bones, pork neck bones, spare ribs, really anything you want as long as you use a combination of both beef and pork. We're gonna parboil these to get rid of the funk and gunk. And don't be like me, make sure you use a bigger pot. After about 10 or 15 minutes of parboiling, I'm going to drain and rinse these under cold water to get them all cleaned up. This will help keep our broth from having an overly beefy and porky odor and give it a cleaner taste. Make sure you clean your pot too. Then we'll get all of our beef and pork back into the pot of water. And then step 2 is prepping all of our aromatics for our broth. During my travels to the motherland back in 2008, I found out the secret to the best Bún Bò Huế was actually pineapple. The pineapple adds another layer of complexity, sweetness, and a little bit of acidity to the broth that's unmatched. Since finding out this little secret, I've made my Bún Bò Huế with pineapple ever since. Using canned pineapple here is also fine if you want to skip out on cutting it, but I'm gonna cut my pineapple like how my mom showed me to minimize as much waste as possible. We'll just need half of this pineapple though, so feel free to cut up the other half and enjoy. And if you like this recipe and you want to learn how to make more of your favorite Vietnamese and Asian dishes, make sure you subscribe and turn on your notifications to stay up to date on all my latest posts. A knob of ginger that I'll cut in half. Then we have a whole yellow onion that we'll just peel. You can also char these up if you want, but I found out in recipe tasting that it doesn't actually make much of a difference in flavor because of how complex the broth is already. So for my recipe, we'll skip out on that step. Then I have 3 stalks of lemongrass, and I'll just remove the bottom and top parts and get rid of some of the outer layer. And then we'll bruise it a bit with the back of our knife. Then once we have all of our aromatics prepped, we'll get that all into the pot. We're gonna bring this up to a rolling boil, skim off any impurities, then lower the heat and let this simmer covered for 1 hour. After an hour, I'm gonna remove the onion and ginger so that they don't have a chance to disintegrate into the broth, as this will help keep the broth clean. And then remember to continue to skim off any impurities that bubble up. We'll let this simmer for another hour, and then after a total of 2 hours, we'll pull out the pork hocks to make sure that they don't fall apart either. Then depending on how thick your beef shank is, it usually takes anywhere between 2.5 and 3.5 hours to cook through and become tender. So for mine, it took about 3 hours, and we'll pull it at that mark. Then I'm just gonna wrap it in plastic wrap and put that in the fridge to cool down to make it easier to slice later. Now, while our broth is simmering, we'll move on to step 3, which is making the satay or chili oil that'll give our broth its signature flavor and color. The base of our satay is shallot and 2 stalks of lemongrass. And you can mince these up by hand, but we're just gonna throw this into the food processor to make it easy. Make sure you cut up your lemongrass into smaller pieces first though, so we don't have any long strands in the final product. Then to a pan, we're gonna add in a 1/4 cup of annatto seed oil, and I just make this from scratch by steeping annatto seeds in hot oil before discarding the annatto seeds. Then we'll add in our minced lemongrass and shallots, a heaping tablespoon of minced garlic, and we'll saute this for just a couple minutes or until fragrant. To that, we're gonna add in 4 tablespoons of red chili flakes, and you can add more or less depending on your own spice tolerance. Then we'll season this up with 2 tablespoons of sugar, 2 tablespoons of fish sauce, and a tablespoon of fermented shrimp paste or mắm tôm to give our Bún Bò Huế some of that stank. Give that a good mix and continue to saute until it looks like this. And then half of this is gonna go into our broth, and we'll save the other half to use as an additional topping for our guests to augment the flavor to their liking. Moving on to step 4, which is making our noodles. Bún Bò Huế uses thick rice noodles, and I don't know why, but every single one of these packages, the instructions say you only need to cook these noodles for like 7 or 8 minutes, but that's completely off base. In my experience, these noodles typically take 30 to 35 minutes to get them to al dente. So to a pot of boiling water, we'll add a splash of oil and salt, drop in our noodles, and let that cook on medium-low for half an hour. Then we'll drain and rinse with cold water to stop the cooking process. and toss in some oil to prevent them from sticking together. We'll put this aside and move on to step 5, and we'll finish prepping all of our toppings and garnishes. We'll start by making our coagulated pork blood, or huet. Now, if you've never had this before, it could be considered an acquired taste. And Hannah actually doesn't care for it much, so feel free to leave this out if you want, but I'm a big fan and it's pretty easy to work with too. I have a 14-ounce container of the pork blood, and we're just gonna get this out of its container and cut into small cubes. Then we're gonna drop this into a pot of boiling water and let that come back up to a boil, cover it, and let that simmer for 15 to 20 minutes or until it's cooked through. When it's done, it should look like this, and we'll just drain the water. Then when our beef shank has cooled, we'll get that thinly sliced up. Then I have some chakwe, which is similar to chalo that you would find in a banh mi, but this one is seasoned with cinnamon and fried instead. We're just gonna get this thinly sliced up as well. Then for our herbs and veggies, we'll start with red cabbage. Now, this is something that my mom always prepped for me instead because I absolutely hate banana blossom. If you want this to be truly authentic though, you should definitely use banana blossom, but that just ain't for me. So we'll thinly shred the red cabbage, and then we'll soak and rinse it in cold water to get it clean and to remove some of the raw cabbage flavor and color so that it doesn't stain our broth. Then I have a white onion that I'll thinly slice. And if you don't like the raw onion flavor, soaking them in cold water will also help reduce its bite. Then we have some green onions that we'll cut up. Our cilantro. And finally, we'll just cut up some wedges of lime. Once we have all that done, we'll season our broth and assemble our bowl. So after a total of 3 to 3.5 hours of simmering, I'm going to remove everything from the pot. And I actually had to split my pot up into 2 because again, my pot was too small, and don't be like me and make your life easier by getting a bigger pot. Then we're gonna add in half of our sauté that we made earlier. And then we'll season our broth with a nub of rock sugar, 2 tablespoons of MSG, and 4 tablespoons of fish sauce. When it's done, you should be left with this beautiful looking broth that is so complex and full of depth and flavor. And now, all we have to do is assemble our bowl and enjoy. We're gonna add our thick rice noodles, some shredded red cabbage, we'll add our pork hocks, our sliced beef shank, some of the chakwe, and we can't forget about the coagulated pork blood. We'll top our bowl with some green onions, cilantro, and white onions. We'll ladle in our beautiful broth, And some folks actually like to strain out all the bits from our sauté for a really clean broth, but we'll keep it rustic today. Then add in a squeeze of lime if you want here and some additional sauté. And just like that, you've made the most amazing and authentic Bún Bò Huế in 6 easy steps. If you've never tried to make it at home before, I know it can be pretty intimidating, but I promise you it's easier than it looks and it's well worth the effort. As always, the full recipe and measurements is on my blog at feedthepudge.com. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy.